Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're tackling a topic that's been debated a lot these past couple months. I haven't gotten to it. I thought it was kind of going crazy. The first couple weeks it was out, the SEC versus Big Ten debate, and so I didn't really touch it, to be honest with you, because I thought it was kind of ridiculous. But now that I've seen it pick up so much steam, and quite frankly, it's talking season, so we just need something to talk about.
Right.
I've got Luke Close on here tonight. He's all spiffed up. He's got the comb over. He's got the shirt. He's ready to go.
Yes,
so am I. I got the collar too.
Yeah, you're looking nice yourself, man. Don't down yourself.
We look like we're about to go on like CNN or Fox News or something right now. Like we're all like, you wouldn't think it's a sports talk show.
Sorry, guys. Instead of more of a bar talk sports show, we're going to do a strictly political show tonight.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about immigration, abortion. No, hell no. that's not our wheelhouse.
They're like 2 weeks without a show. What we miss?
I know. We were expected to go last week, and well, I mean, it's the week of the 4th, and so
right,
shit happens. But here we are, and for the foreseeable future, we should be rolling here. But no, like, I'm not Jesse Waters. You know, you're not Tucker Carlson. So no. This is a sports show here. Oh, there's Drover. Hey, buddy. Drover's coming in for an appearance. Come on up. There he is. There's the guy.
He's gotten big since the national championship show we did for basketball.
Oh yeah, no, he's probably around 80 pounds now. He's a big boy.
Yeah. You got to watch what you're feeding him. He's gonna be 120 soon.
No, the feet are big. He's in English. He's gonna get there. No doubt.
Yeah.
But let's tackle this SEC, Big Ten. Luke, if you want to open up the argument, we can start.
Yep. So obviously, growing up in Alabama, college football is like a religion here. It is what people live and die by. It is what families base. It's when families have kids and they're split, like an Alabama and Auburn family. Each parent wants to have one kid go for the team that they go for. It's that big down here. And for years, we saw the SEC dominate the college football landscape, the recruiting landscape. You know, you had your Michigans and your Ohio States that would always kind of, fill in, Penn State as well. But I forget how many years it was, but I want to say it was like 12 of the last 13 champions had been from the SEC at one point. Or something.
I did. I'll be honest. I got into an argument in one of my TikTok posts
right
a couple weeks ago, and I want to say that the stat was 13 of the last 19 national championships the SEC has won, which is pure dominance. And right. The Big Ten, until Ohio State, the Big Ten had only won one national championship since 2015. Then Michigan came in, and then Ohio State.
Right, and I think that there was really no argument at all. The results spoke for themselves. Michigan was down for a while. Ohio State couldn't win the big game. Penn State still struggles to win the big game to this day. But now you look at the last couple of years and with NIL and how it's changing, and these schools that have a lot of money and have high attendance rate, they're starting to compete more. And not to mention the additions of the Oregon and the USC and UCLA. And it's not just college football; it's other sports too that the Big Ten's really starting to. I think hearing all that talk really put a chip on the Big Ten's shoulder, and they are starting to compete. But I am still at the basis of that the SEC is the dominant factor of this sport. And because, look, the SEC is the ringleader of everything. You don't hear about the Big Ten trying to separate from the NCAA, and people go crazy about it. But the SEC has that power. The SEC has that money. And at this rate, the Big Ten's catching up, but I'm still going to put the SEC slightly ahead. And when I say slightly ahead, I mean by a good margin, by a good 3, 4, 5 team margin.
Well, the way the way that I want to tee this up is by saying that like these are distinctively the two best conferences in college football.
Absolutely,
it's not even particularly close. Like this is the upper echelon. Like outside of your Clemson, your Arizona States, those teams that catch fire late in the season, these two conferences have the bulk of teams that will be competing for a national championship. So I just want to start this off by saying that these are clearly the two best conferences in college football. Also, I want to lead into this as well. The Big Ten is like their top three teams compete for national championships.
Absolutely.
Like that's that, and I can see both sides of this argument. Like I can see where the Big Ten argument comes from of yes, we've won the past two national championships, and that's something that has to be acknowledged. And I'll also acknowledge the truth that last year, comparatively speaking to the previous decade, yeah, the SEC was down last year. I mean, you didn't have a team in the national championship. Haven't had a team in the national championship since Georgia against TCU. And so, yes, comparatively speaking, the SEC is down. But that's just 1 year. That's 1 year of sample size. We're talking about an entire decade. Yeah, I mean, you had Alabama, Georgia, LSU dominating. A lot of the SEC success is on the shoulders of Alabama. So I will acknowledge that.
And Florida as well. And
yes, in the 2000s.
Florida was a big team, and you've had some powers that have been down to. I mean, even Auburn managed to make it to the national championship twice, and I hate to say it as an Alabama fan, but I mean they did their job. And I mean, you have teams that are traditionally very good, like Tennessee, that were down, and the SEC still had 5, 6 of the top 10. And Ole Miss and Mississippi State also had their stretches where they're very good. So I think the quality of teams is deeper in the SEC than it is the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially 2014. That year was insane when you had both Mississippi State and Ole Miss competing at the top of the rankings. That was insane. But here's, so yes, relatively speaking, the SEC and everybody, it's one of those things where the general public, whenever you have an entity, it's really good. I mean, you saw it with the Patriots when they had Tom Brady. You saw it with Alabama with Nick Saban. You see it with the SEC now. Whenever you have an entity that's really good, people want to see it fall.
Yeah,
that's just reality. And then when they start to dip a little bit, everybody's there to point your finger at you. Oh, you're slipping up. Even if it's not a major slip. I mean, the SEC still had, was it 3 teams in the playoff last year?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still very good. Disappointing season out of Ole Miss last year. I can't say disappointing season out of Alabama. Exactly what I expected out of Alabama last year.
Yeah,
it was mainly Ole Miss that really pissed me off of not making the playoff last year. Like that there's no excuse why they should not have been in.
Right.
But these stats taken from the end of this past year, I want to acknowledge here. So I can see both sides of the argument, right? Like I can see where the Big Ten argument is to the past national championships. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. And I see the SEC's argument of dominating the past decade and having depth. These are the stats from the end of last year. So of the top 36 teams, the SEC had 9. Of the top 40 teams, the Big Ten, the Big Ten had 4 top 10 teams. Right. And so that speaks to the composition of that conference.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Ohio State's dominant. Oregon's dominant. Penn State's getting there. Michigan's, I'm of the belief that Michigan's not really gone. I think that they're going to be right back in the middle of everything here the next year or two. So I think they're still hovering around there. They have a new head coach. They're in the same position Alabama's in. Alabama's the same way. They're going to be back.
Yeah.
But 4 top 10 teams out of the Big Ten last year, and then there's a drop off. Only 4 more in the remainder of the top 40.
Yeah.
And now let's get to the bottom 40 of all of the FBS. The SEC only had 2 teams. You can guess who they were last year: Kentucky, Mississippi State. And I'll say Kentucky was a pesky, shitty team last year.
They went on the road and beat Ole Miss.
I mean, yeah, we watched that together. That was unreal. That a week before, they almost slayed the dragon. That was Georgia.
Yeah.
And then the Big Ten had 3 teams in the bottom 40, and those teams I use this term. I don't like to use this term a lot, but I did with Zeke the other day, and I'll use it again here. Northwestern, Purdue, they were pushovers last year.
Yeah, they're not competitive.
Like they were free wins.
They're not competitive.
No, it's like, hey, here, beat me. I'm here. I'm roadkill.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what they were last year. I'm not going to speculate that they'll be that again this year, but that's looking at that like you're talking a team like Ohio State or Oregon matching up against one of those teams. They're going to destroy them. It's not even close. Where, you know, if you're Georgia, you have to look out for Kentucky. What the general public or what opposers of the SEC want you to think is that's because of Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh, that's because of Kentucky.
Yeah, I agree.
Go look at Kentucky's roster. Go look at their offense, their defense. Look at their 24/7 profiles,
and look at their coaching staff as well.
Look at their coaching staff. Get like this is yes, they're at the bottom tier of the conference, but this is it's no pushover.
Don't forget that Kentucky has a head coach that Texas A&M had some type of relationship with. It's not confirmed whether or not it was ever, concrete or whatnot. But if a program like Texas A&M is even involved with that name, and pretty seriously involved, if I may add, that shows a lot about what Kentucky has. And I like their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator as well. And I think that Kentucky has been better over the last decade as well. And I think last year was just like how you said with Michigan, how it was kind of like fluky and you think they're going to be back in the mix. Kentucky was consistently in the mix in the SEC East for a while. I remember them having Benny Snell, Lynn Bowden. They've had a lot of dynamic players at Kentucky. And they're doing well in the recruiting trail too. And they literally landed a couple big commitments. One was a flip from Auburn. I believe one was a quarterback, and that's just both 4 stars just in the last week. So, I mean, it's just for me, this whole argument comes down to it's not about the top of the tops because the top of the tops are going to be the top of the tops.
Yeah.
It's about that middle tier and that lower tier. And undoubtedly, without uncertainty, I can say that the SEC's middle tier is more challenging and don't even look at it as SEC versus Big 10. Look at it as SEC versus Big 12 or SEC versus ACC. That middle tier is more competitive against the best teams in those conferences than the middle tier of the Big 10 is.
Absolutely, they are. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's the argument that I'll present to people because I had a lot of people try to start shit with me last year about the SEC Big 10 thing because people know how passionate I am about the SEC. That's always been part of me until I have a damn SEC keychain. I'll be frank, I love the SEC, but this is an objective show here, so right. I'm gonna break shit down truthfully. Yeah. And when you look at these two conferences, I think that they're two dominant conferences that are structured differently. The Big 10 has all of their force, all of their power accumulated at the top. Right, I mean it's almost like a milk tank at a farm.
Yeah,
the cream is at the top, and there's a lot of it. It's a thick layer. You've got Ohio State, who I think you can make an argument that as of today could be the best program in college football.
It's hard to argue that.
I'm gonna say Georgia. You can make an argument for Georgia. I still believe that. I think Georgia can go into this year and get back to the national championship. I don't think you can count Alabama out yet either, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, and I'll build on that here in a second. But you've got Oregon, who I firmly believe is just a breakaway from getting to a national championship. I'll call it as it was. They got fucked last year getting Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. If they got Boise State in that round, having a totally different conversation about Oregon. And Penn State, I mean, they were in the semis last year. Michigan won a natty in 2024. And so that top layer is really good. But it's when you start to get below that and, you're taking a look around and it's kind of like when you're driving through Arkansas, like you're in Little Rock for 1 second. You're if you're in there's civilization around you, you're in a city, and then you're on I-30 and you start to get out, in the woods. You're like, wow, there's actually
nothing here.
I've seen a house in 5 miles.
Yeah,
that's what the Big 10 is. Once you get below Michigan, you look around and I mean USC was once a great program. Nebraska was once a great program, and I think a lot of people, leverage their hopes on those two getting back.
Right.
But how much certainty there's of that happening, I'm not to say. Iowa, a couple of years ago, like when I was a freshman in college, yeah, Kirk Ferentz had that Iowa team pumping them rushing games and physical defenses. They were, a top 10 team for a while. They had an undefeated run back in 2015. They've fallen off since. Wisconsin was great at one point. They've fallen off. Michigan State, who I want to see be really good, has fallen off. And then, then they got like Minnesota, right? Rutgers. And then you really start to get into the Northwestern and the Purdue. And it is just – point is it's thin once you get below Michigan.
And to your point about Penn State being in the semifinals and Oregon drawing Ohio State, that's just how the playoff format went last year. And they're switching it because of that, because it wasn't fair to Oregon to have to play probably the best team in the country.
Fucking ridiculous. After winning their conference championship, like that's what they get. Like there's no incentive to a conference championship at that point.
Right. And so that's like, but at the same time, you can make the same argument that Penn State had a really good draw and that's why they got there. But besides the point. When I'm looking at the Big Ten, and I like how you said it, you're a huge SEC guy, and I like how I think that's the beauty of this show is that we have our biases, and everybody knows what our biases is. Unlike some people in the mainstream media that have their biases and try not to show people what it is, but they still have it. But we show it, and we're willing to be honest with what's going on. And if one of our favorite teams isn't playing well, we're going to tell you straight up that they're not playing well and that they're not what they used to be. But I think that when I'm looking at the SEC versus the Big Ten, I'm not really looking at the overall, like the rankings or the numbers as much because like we've talked about a little bit, I think this has been our main kind of theme of the show is that the numbers are always there for the top teams. And I'm kind of just looking at like how college football is right now and the world that we're in right now. And as much as I hate to say it, I think it was Scott Frost, actually, who is a former Nebraska coach as well as former UCF coach. He said, before the ball game's won on the field, it's won in the bank account. And when you're looking at the money aspect, the SEC is ahead of the Big Ten. And I understand, Ohio State had their $20 million team or whatever, but like you said with the milk thing too, the money filters farther down in the SEC than it does the Big Ten, and teams are willing to spend more in the SEC than they are in the Big Ten. That's why you have your Northwesterns. That's why you have your Purdues. That's why you have your Rutgers. And I don't know these numbers for sure, but after looking at the revenue sharing models for a lot of SEC schools, I'm willing to bet they're extremely heavy on football. You have your Kentuckys that are going to do it for basketball and whatnot. They have their focuses there. But I'm willing to bet that some of the Northwesterns and the Rutgers and all them, their money's pretty even. And there's other sports that they might even be investing in too, like hockey. They're just not. The SEC is a football conference. I think the Big Ten is more focused on being an all-around conference, if that makes sense.
The Big Ten, and that is a fantastic point, and one that really has to be made here as we go into the revenue sharing era here, because you as administrators, you have to make those decisions. You got to split the pie up a certain way.
Right.
So whereas these past maybe 2, 3, 4 years, you had that window of opportunity where you could raise as much capital as you wanted in your collectives and spend it wherever you wanted.
Right.
And so you could invest a shit ton of money into football, a shit ton of money into hockey. Like if you're Michigan, so like Michigan is a school that has a lot of money, a lot of distinguished alumni. They are one of the few schools that can put a shit ton into football, basketball, hockey. They're passionate about all of it. Well, now they have to make a decision. Like what is most important, and
what makes you the money,
and what makes you the money. I'm sorry, like yes, football is big in Wisconsin. It's big in Minnesota. You can argue it's more leveraged on pro teams, the Vikings, the Packers. And so if you're a college, if you're the Badgers, you're the Golden Gophers, what's going to bring asses to seats? It's different up north than it is down here.
That's a great point.
Hockey sells. You're not going to get people in Tuscaloosa to go to a hockey game as easily. Like people want up there, they want to drink beer and watch hockey. That's what they want to do. Purdue's a basketball school. Purdue's the preseason #1 right now. And they have a lot of returning production in basketball. They're recruiting the hell out of the trail right now. And they have a monster of a program. And you look at Purdue's basketball games, sell out. They can sell at the Mackey on a Tuesday night.
They might have more people in the Mackey on a Tuesday night than they do in their football stadium on a Saturday.
And that's okay. Like if Duke is the same way.
Yeah.
If that's your sport, by all means, hammer down. I think the only one in the SEC that stands out from that standpoint is Kentucky. Kentucky's a basketball school.
Right.
Outside of that, everybody is football, football, football. So that's just where the focus is going to be because that's where the demographic is. That's what the people want.
And I think you briefly mentioned this, but I think one of the most important things you said there was the pro aspect. Up north, a lot of people care more about pro football than in the South. You're from New York.
Yeah.
Do you think more people care about the Giants or the Jets or Rutgers or Syracuse? It's easily the Giants or the Jets. In the South, most people's college football teams are their pro sports teams as well. Like that's the different in mind. It's different mindsets. And as in Alabama, the SEC is a pro sports conference. Alabama has the Birmingham Stallions, but we've got, the closest fan bases are the Tennessee Titans, the Falcons, and the New Orleans Saints. And not many Alabama fans are going to spend their Sunday morning watching the Titans, Saints, or Falcons. They're probably still recovering from going to the Alabama game or they're traveling back from traveling 1,000 miles to go watch Alabama play Wisconsin. Like it's just different.
Yeah, I mean that's the nature of the beast down here, and it took me moving down here in 2021 to realize that because growing up in New York, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It was all about the Giants. It was all about the Jets. It was all about the Bills.
Right.
There's a lot of Cowboys fans up there for some reason, which is
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. And I I was kind of viewed as like a freak for as being as much into college sports as I was because I was always college. Like it was. I started off, quite frankly, an Oregon fan because of the colors when I was younger.
Understandable.
And quickly became an Alabama fan when I was like 12, 13. But that was my Saturdays were dedicated to college football, and people up there didn't understand it. But that's the difference between Big Ten country and the SEC. And I noticed the stark difference when I moved down in 21. It's everyone is all invested into college, and then. I also want to say this too, comparing the two conferences and just playing football here. Cultures, right? Programs that have good cultures, because last year was what it was. But when you look at a 5-year plan, trajectory, how's the future going to play out? I will say, I think the SEC has a higher volume of really high quality cultures, football cultures, than the Big Ten. The Big Ten, Dan Lanning is one of the best cultures in college football. Ohio State sells itself. James Franklin, love or hate him, has built a machine in State College. Sharon Moore is like Michigan has its identity. Sharon Moore is retooling it right now after the departure of Jim Harbaugh. Outside of that, culture-wise, there's a lot of question marks in the Big Ten. Lincoln Riley, what's going on there in USC? They've been blazing on the recruiting trail, but as far as the on-field product and the culture inside the building, there's been a lot of question marks. Nebraska. I mean, I'm a Nebraska guy. Like I love Matt Rule. I love the Huskers. I want to see them do good. But I have question marks about what's going on in inside of the walls of that program right now. As they do Michigan State, not a lot of traction. Compared to what we saw growing with Coach D'Antonio. I can't even speak on Northwestern and Purdue. Iowa has had a great culture. I think that right now Kirk Ferentz's culture and his vision is starting to look like Tom Coughlin. I feel like later in his years where his strategy, his vision really worked for the majority of his career. But once it hit a certain point, it started to get kind of antiquated.
Well, they're falling behind in money too.
And they're falling behind in money and Iowa City too. Like that has to be acknowledged as well. And then I will say PJ Fleck has always had a great culture wherever he
I
goes.
agree.
Like,
Row the boat.
row the boat, baby. Western Michigan. I have a video about Western Michigan coming out tomorrow. But like PJ Fleck has a great vision, but I think that there's a misalignment up there in Minnesota, like we talk about with resources. I think there's just more resources going into hockey.
And one more, I completely, and this is gonna just tag along on what you just said about culture. And if we're just looking at on-field product as well, and we're gonna talk about just football games and football teams and styles of football. The SEC has a lot of different styles of football that teams play. You've got your Georgia that run the ball, traditional game managing quarterback, defense hard nose, like early Saban days, when Kirby was there. You've got Kalen DeBoer now, who runs more of a quick run and gun West Coast type deal. You've got Lane Kiffin, who's an offensive mastermind. They do kind of a similar thing: spread, hurry up. You've got Sarkisian, who's an offensive mastermind, who's like a mix of both. And then you've got all the other teams. They're all just in the middle of that. But the Big Ten, it seems like what you're going to get on every Saturday. It's just run the ball, and you have your dynamic playmakers like your Jeremiah Smiths and I can't remember. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Michigan had that wide receiver a couple of years ago,
Roman Wilson,
and so you have those guys that are there, but sometimes you don't even know that they're there because everybody plays such a similar style. And it's kind of like what you were talking about when it's like, the cream up here. It's the top teams. They're dynamic. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're not dynamic and they play boring football, but the Big Ten, when Big Noon Saturday is Illinois versus Wisconsin, I'm watching Texas A&M versus Arkansas instead. And that's, I think, outside of maybe those two fan bases, that's the majority of the country as well.
Oh, I absolutely, because we know that rivalry that exists between those two schools and how seriously they take it. I mean, but being here in Texas right now, like that's something's being discussed right now. A&M, Arkansas, they're both alumni bases, fan bases are huge around here, and so that's a discussion like even in the summer months here.
And I have just one more quick little tidbit that I'd like to say that kind of this is going to be an SEC homer statement, but there's a reason why the SEC on CBS was so popular and so many people were so upset about it being gone. And I don't know if I really watched. I might have watched 2 Big Ten on CBS games last year. It just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same quality.
The matchups.
That's what it is.
The matchups were not the same. And I mean, and that goes into a whole other conversation there because those were all traditional matchups that we grew up watching on there. Like you're talking Alabama and Florida and Ole Miss and LSU and Florida LSU, right? Georgia, Arkansas, just to name a few. Like those teams that see each other every year. Whereas like you're looking at the Big Ten now, and it's like Penn State and USC. Granted, they had that Rose Bowl several years ago.
Yeah,
but they're just like Oregon and Illinois. I'm just like random, but okay. Like I'll see how long this takes until I flick this off. And so and then you look at the cultures in the SEC, and I want to place an emphasis on this too. Georgia, I think you could say there's an argument the best culture in college football. I know there's the off the field stuff that goes on. It hasn't been as bad this year as it's been in past years, but with the speeding and whatnot and misdemeanor, but it hasn't been as bad as it's been in past years. This year, it's been polished up. Georgia's culture is rock solid. You look at what Tennessee's doing in with Josh Heupel, and I know it's shitty what happened with them with Nico a couple months ago. Completely out of his control, completely out of his staff's control. They're building something special, maybe a little bit delayed here because that was unexpected, kind of like an Andrew Luck Colts thing in 2018. But Tennessee will get back on path. Lane Kiffin is building a machine in Ole Miss. I know they fell short of where a lot of us expected last year. He's building a machine. I think Mike Elko is building a machine in A&M right now.
Yeah,
that culture is rock solid. LSU is what it is, and yes, I think Kalen DeBoer is building something special in Alabama. Again, like a Michigan situation. A legend leaves and left you a lot of good resources, but you've got to make it your own. Yeah. That's the situation Kalen DeBoer is in. but I think he's going to do it. Steve Sarkisian, top three program, top four program in college football right now. Those are all in one conference. And so culture is what leads to sustainability. Culture is the reason why the Big Ten has seen 2 national championships in the past 2 years, because this is something that I'll say here. This is an argument that I hear a lot, especially in this NIL era, is that whoever has the most money, that's who's going to compete for a national championship. Really? Well, where's USC?
Yeah.
Where's Miami? Where's UCLA? They have a lot of money. They're nowhere near the top. And Michigan has a lot of money. Ohio State doesn't have nearly as much. Both teams went to where they did because they have culture. I mean, you look at Ohio State, and their returning production was off the charts last year for a team of that caliber. And the same with Michigan the year before. Guys cared about the program, and they wanted to run it back. And they did. They won a natty. Like, that's what distinguishes. That's what wins. When I look at a lot of who has that DNA, most of those teams right now, they reside in the SEC.
Yeah, I think that basically I think we've hit pretty much everything that was on my mind really when it comes to this argument. And I just want to I know we've been kind of negative on the Big Ten. I want to point out this as well, just kind of some positivity for the Big Ten. I think that the Big Ten has a lot of good atmospheres in their conference. I love Ohio State. I love the Horseshoe and the Big House, and Autzen Stadium, I think, is one of the loudest in the country. And I'm not saying that obviously the SEC has, in my opinion, the best, but I think that the Big Ten, like we said to start the show off, this is not meant to be a Big Ten hating conversation. It's just they're matched up against the SEC. And if people want to argue this point that the Big Ten is eclipsing the SEC, then you have to look at everything in total. Sure, they have Michigan and Ohio State who won the last two national championships, but it's about the full body of work, and you're only as strong as your weakest man. And the SEC is undoubtedly stronger in their weakest man than the Big Ten is.
And that's the thing too right now is last year, the best teams in the Big Ten were better than the best teams in the SEC. They were. And in 2024, they were. I can't even say that for 2023, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, because and this is one I'm prepared to get bashed for this. I don't care.
You think Georgia's better than Alabama?
I think Georgia's better than Alabama. I think they're better than Texas. I think they're better than Michigan. Georgia was hands down the best team in the country in 2023. I think if Alabama played Georgia 10 times, Georgia wins at least 7. We played them that night in Atlanta. We got the win. Alabama overperformed in 2023, which is what you do when you have a great coach like Nick Saban. They got to the Rose Bowl. They almost defeated.
They should have won that game.
They should have won that game. They didn't. Michigan's your national champion. They earned it. Both games, they earned fair and square. Want to make that clear. But I will say that, I don't like to speak theoretically like this a lot. But if the tables were turned and Georgia wins, they weren't the healthiest in Atlanta. They get a couple weeks to recover, and they play Michigan instead of Alabama. I think it's a vastly different result. And so just because 2 Big Ten teams won the past 2 years doesn't automatically make them better than the SEC. A lot of people want the SEC to fall, quite frankly, and they see that glimmer of hope, and they're riding it. They're riding it, and yes, last year the Big Ten had better teams at the top than the SEC. Is that what's going to sustain these next 5 years? I'm not one to say. We have a season of a lot of exciting football coming up here. We could have a Big Ten and SEC team eating the national championship. We could have a Big Ten team win it all. We could have an SEC team win it all. Hell, I'm very high on Clemson this year. They could win it all this year. It's an argument to cap it off that's still very much developing. The trends are still very much developing. This current day, July 9th of 2025, I think the SEC still has a considerable edge. Will that be the case? Who knows? Like I said, examining cultures, I have a feeling looking 5 years out, the SEC will still be the best conference in college football. I could be all wrong, but on this current day right now, I have to say that the SEC has the edge. And the Big Ten, the Big Ten didn't have repeat champions since the 90s until this year. And so what the Big Ten has been able to do these past couple of years is massive. When you have Ohio State on a run like they're on, you have Oregon on a run like they're on, you have Penn State on a run like they're on, and Michigan getting back there. And hell, if USC can hold on to this recruiting class and make something out of this, they could be up there. The Big Ten has really, really, really good things cooking right now. And I want to acknowledge that. They're right up there with the SEC, but I still give the SEC an edge as of this day.
Usually for my closing statement, I have a ton to say and some friendly banter for a rival fan base or for you or whoever you're going, whatever team you're going for in the pro sports league now. But today I'm gonna sorry, I had to hit you with that one after your Dallas job. But today I'm gonna switch it up a little bit, and I actually have a question for the viewers here, and I'd like to hear what y'all think about this. There's been a lot of talk. The black sheep of college football is Notre Dame, and I'd like to see what everybody thinks about this. Is the question right here: if Notre Dame were to join the Big Ten, how would that affect your view on the Big Ten against the SEC?
That's fascinating because I actually think that with Marcus Freeman, you want to talk culture? I think you can put Notre Dame in the top 5 right now. Because I haven't seen Notre Dame look like this in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I made a video about this a few weeks ago. They're going nowhere. Like, this is Notre Dame, what you saw last year is not a fluke. That, I know there can be lightning in a bottle run sometimes. That was not one. That Marcus Freeman has that program marching the beat of a different drum right now. And so I think if you put Notre Dame in the Big Ten, I think they could be the second best team, second best program in there behind Ohio State. Oregon is on the way up. They haven't proven anything yet. Penn State, same thing. And Michigan's rebuilding back to where they were. On this day, I think if you put Notre Dame in there, definitely strengthens that conference and brings this argument even closer if you have a juggernaut like Notre Dame in there. But it shuffles the deck a little bit because your Penn State, your Oregons, I mean,
yeah,
it's game on. There's a new kid on the block.
Seriously, and I'm interested to see. And mate, I know there's been talk about it. I personally don't know if they'll ever do it, but it'd be interesting. And that's what college football is all about. It's all about hypotheticals.
God, I would love that. That would be incredible for that conference, for the sport overall. I get why Notre Dame doesn't do it from a financial standpoint, but man, that just from a fan standpoint, that would be fucking electric. Because like geographically it makes sense too. Indiana, like the right in the middle of Indiana, like that would be amazing.
I agree.
Well, Luke, it was great having you on. Well,
yes, sir.
We'll be back next week. We'll discuss. I got a couple teams in mind to talk about next week. A couple I really want to get to, so we can decide on that. But thank you all for watching, and have a great day.